Welcome everyone. Good morning. Very early good morning to Professor Daniel, who is our speaker today. And we also have Dr. Annapurna Pandey, who is the Chief Proctor of Ramaya Institute of Technology, Bangalore, and also Professor in Computer Science Department. And we also have Professor Ashwini Holla, who is working in Canara Engineering College, Bangalore, which is also part of our Bangalore section. So this is one of the unique conference which we are trying to organize. We are organizing rather, where we have more than 700, 800 participants who have registered for this conference, and we have had the tracks. This is very special session which we have arranged for all our participants, and also we'll be interacting in other modes as well during the session. So one important thing I want to tell you is a small story about how this started. So I am an alumni of Maastricht University, and I did my PhD there. This is the beautiful campus which is on the screen. So there I happened to attend one of the MOOC course which was hosted by Professor Daniel, and then amazing course. And it was very interactive, very vigorous. It's almost like 2,000, if I'm not wrong. And it was one of the best courses. Then later I learned that my university, Maastricht University, is one of the best university which is practicing problem-based learning with very unique method. And with that, Professor Daniel has a lot of experience in both online, in your regular class, as well as online. How do you do in through online, which we are trying to do in this COVID-19 situation. So we thought, why don't we organize this tutorial so that it will benefit our conference attendees as well as our IEEE Researchers Forum attendees. So then I got an idea, why don't I approach Professor Daniel, and we have been interacting from past almost 1.5 months to schedule this session, and today we have. So this is a brief session. So this will be more like a hands-on session for all of us, and it's more of interactive. So we have got a couple of teachers who are teaching, or professors who are teaching the regular class, which will be in interacting mode. And we have already shared details about Professor Daniel. I would also tell her to tell her about herself before we start. But she's one of the amazing professors. I've attended many sessions of her, and she's really practicing this in place. And because of this pandemic situation, I guess problem-based learning is the next, which all of us should practice. It's not just us. So with this opening remarks, and welcome all the participants, all the panelists, and our speaker, then I would like to hand over our mic to our speaker, Professor Daniel. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abhishek. I have fond memories of you participating in the MOOC, also in a session where we were interacting there. I'm honored today to tell you something more about problem-based learning and how we practice it. It's really a hand-on session about how problem-based learning works. And if you would like to know more about how it works online, then maybe I can talk about that a little bit at the end of the session. Let me see. So this is me. I'm based in the School of Health Professions Education in Maastricht. We support the faculty in doing problem-based learning, but I'm also program director of our own Master of Health Professions Education, which is educating people who work in health professions, doctors and nurses, to become teachers. I do some research on online and blended learning and also some projects, but that's different. And the School of Health Profession Education not only practices problem-based learning, but also does research on problem-based learning and how it works best. We have some courses on this and on education in general. And we also collaborate with parties in projects all over the world. My own background, I forgot to say, is in cognitive science and instructional science. So I'm not a health professional, although I meet a lot of those in my work now. So for those of you who want to know more, this is the YouTube channel and the email address. But today I'm here to do a tutorial on problem-based learning, and I was very honored to be invited to do this by Dr. Abhishek, but he also got me into trouble a little bit, because when we do this for our new teaching staff in Maastricht, we do it in a small group, in a tutorial setting. We don't give lectures about problem-based learning. And by the end of this session, I hope that I can explain to you why. So we're going to do a little bit of an experiment. We're doing an online PBL tutorial with some people who actively collaborate with me, Dr. Abhishek, Dr. Annapurna, and Dr. Ashwini. Very distinguished colleagues, but today you will be the participants in my workshop, and I hope that all the others who are listening will be thinking along just as well. So let's go to my first question to my panel. I would like you to think about a moment in your past that you really learned a lot. A moment that you remember as, well, that was a moment that was significant and I learned a lot. And it can be a formal moment with a teacher or something that you experienced in work or in private life, but I'll give you 2 minutes or so to think about this, and then I'll ask you to tell me about these moments. So when something comes to your mind, then please just open your microphone and let me hear.
Okay, let me start first. So I have a couple of very important moments which I'm really excited to share among the fraternity here. First thing is when I attended a course at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology in USA, and that time when we finished the course and end of it, we had a competition where we won. That was like amazing moment. That course was just 1 week, but the amount of learning was amazing. Coming to one single moment, a very small moment, if I want to tell, whenever, especially this COVID-19, what created a situation is for us to learn a lot of tools. So first time when I did a session, something like this for my students, it was big disaster because I didn't know anything. Then slowly after 2 months, things got very settled. Now I'm very comfortable with online teaching. It's not that I don't know how to do online teaching, but how to make sure that they are also learning from us. It's more of interactive way. So that's about my experience.
That's nice, Abhishek. Can I come in? Professor Daniëlle, can I come in?
Yes?
Yeah. Coming to me, I've been teaching for almost 2 decades now. And I've been feeling very happy when we do this learning with the students. For example, because I'm a computer science lady, so I'll give you a small example of algorithms, what we teach as a part of the course. So when I could teach the sorting algorithms for the students, and they had given the real-time examples how these work, that was a wow factor for me, having seen my students learning. For example, why does the postman sort all his letters on the street-wise, the state-wise, and so on, the line-wise, and so on? So he sorts it in order to solve the problem quickly. So the searching, what he does in the big array of 50 posts, which he has to distribute across the lanes in the city, he tries to sort them on increasing order or decreasing order from where he's starting. And then this sorting, when he applies for his distribution of post, he does it very quickly because one of the important advantage of sorting these letters was accessing them very fast. So when you access the letters fast with a smaller piece of the clutch, that would help the real application of sorting. Okay, so that was something very amazing when I taught my first year students, and they could quickly relate to the real-time example. So that was one of my experiences. And as Abhishek told, in the recent years, it was wonderful learning new tools. So if the teachers had to deliver it to their respective students, they have to be well versed with the tool first. Only then they can right from small instance of recording the meets, muting them, unmuting them, probably not allowing a set of students to share their screens, because we had all notorious students also coming in when we were teaching. So slowly we learned that we could have some privileges to block certain chats among themselves and to concentrate on the teacher. Okay, so to make my experience short, these are two things which I had to share with my panelists as well as my attendees here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So, as Madam has told, I found learning with students very interesting. Most of the times it was not the regular classroom learning, but out in the fields. Being a part of IEEE, I saw that recruiting people for doing events which are outside of the college, we get a lot of people, but there's not much of focus. So getting them to focus on a task at hand and getting to recruit as many people for an event was very challenging. At times, like we used to go to the orphanages and just, spend time doing nothing. So I wanted it to be something useful. So I asked them to survey what are the different ways in which we can actually use some technology to help the people there who are differently able and with their own sets of problems. So this went on that we used to go there most of our weekends, and a lot of problem statements for the final year project came from there, and I had a ball there, interacting with these fertile young minds. And there are two more instances. One wherein I organized a workshop on ITK and VTK way back in probably 2011. These are two tools that most of you would know in computer vision, right? So it was a ball because we had very little resources, and installing that software would need that we install some other things as well. Most of us went bonkers trying to do that, and the workshop was spent for 4 hours. We spent a lot of time actually in installing these things. So there was a lot of learning that one particular day when everybody did not know much about what exactly is going to happen and how you do it quickly, and we all did a good job that day. And the last one I remember because this was a practical situation wherein my grandparents actually had fallen ill, and not many people around that I could rely on. So I had to do some makeshift things and manage the situation. That was very difficult task. It's not an experience that I had. The learning curve that I had on few days was tremendous. Working when you do not have many resources at hand. So at the end of the day, I learned how not to do things. So that was a good thing. Was I audible? I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much for your input, and I'd like to reflect on the things that you said very briefly, because when we ask this question to people, many of them, like you, react with examples where they had to do a certain task, or where they had a realistic example, or when they encountered a problem and had to solve it, or when you work with students on a task that is meaningful, We have, in the educational world, we use the words constructive or active learning, contextual learning, meaning in the context where you have to actually apply it, do it. Collaborative learning, you all described the situations where you were learning with others, with your students, with your colleagues, and self-directed learning, situations where you have to direct your own learning, where you have to find your own solutions, where you are in the driver's seat. And for us, these are the principles behind problem-based learning. And we try to make our students learn like that from day one, from when they start, 18-year-olds just out of secondary school, and sometimes even before. And to show you how it works or how it can work, I'll briefly show you this figure of the 7 steps that we use with beginner students with first and second years. We give them a problem, and then they go through 7 steps. And you don't have to read all of this because I will take you through these 7 steps now with an example problem so that you can see how it goes. Typically, our students meet for a pre-discussion where they do steps 1 to 5. Then they go home and they study. They take their books, they go to the library, they study, and then they come back to discuss what they found in a discussion session or a post-discussion. So let me show you how it can work with an example. And I've taken an example from real life that is from the field of psychology, but I think it will be something that you can all relate to. So I would like to ask you to read this problem, and then we're going to do the first 2 steps together. So my first question to my panelists now is, are there any words or concepts that you don't know in this text? And you can just nod or shake your head.
So there are no unknown words or concepts.
Huh? So this is an...
I feel, yeah, no, something which you can relate to. Could happen to any of us.
It could happen to any of us, and it's a problem that we could all imagine, no? So this Anita comes home, and she's in a little bit of a difficult situation. What do you think is the main problem of Anita here? And as the panelists can maybe just discuss this amongst themselves and get to a definition of what the main problem is.
An unanticipated situation.
She's scared of spiders.
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
She didn't expect it there, and that's probably why, she got scared, or she already had a fear of spiders.
You should be good with your neighbors so that in difficult situations they can.
I feel, just to come in, I feel the first word which tells Anita was actually tired, and that could have not been resilient to things happening around her. Probably if she was at home and she had a calm mind or something like, she would not have been so frightened as she is now. So that could also be one of the things which we can use. she's pretty tired, and that could have panicked her when she saw the.
So maybe one of you can summarize the problem for us in one sentence.
Yeah, Abhishek, would you go ahead summarizing? I think the keywords would be Anita is tired, she's frightened of animals, and the third one, what Abhishek told, that you have to be good with neighbors so that they help you out when you are in need. So the main problem would be that she is frightened of these creatures, small creatures, and she thinks that they could bring harm to her, which actually might not be the case. And my perspective is because she is tired, she is more scared, and she is panicked. That
Yeah.
would, just summarize.
And so you have, that's a good.
Yeah, somebody has nicely written, Madam Daniëlle, that not react but respond. Somebody has summarized it as not react
Don't
but
react but respond, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so
I mean,
you said this is another possible way of phrasing it. And an important thing I want to add at this moment is that when we do problem-based learning like this, there is not one correct solution. So you said that she's afraid of spiders, and probably because she's tired and it's unexpected. And this is a problem statement from another group of students. And I have a small intermezzo here because I'm trying to explain a little bit the basics of problem-based learning in between the steps. So one of the important things that we have done now is that we have given you a problem description that is relevant to you because you understand it. It's easy to understand what happened. When you have a relevant context, a relevant problem like that, it's easier for you to learn and to store new knowledge in your memory. And it's also easier to retrieve that knowledge and apply it later on. So this is an important reason why we always start from a problem description that our students can relate to. So let's go to the next step. We have the problem. This is the same problem description. And I would like to discuss you to discuss what you already know about this problem. What do you already know about somebody who's afraid of spiders? What could be happening here?
Maybe she knows how the spider looks. And she knows that she can call neighbor to help for help.
So obviously she has a good relation to her neighbors, and that is something that helps.
So one of our attendees telling she has a previous experience with spiders.
Oh.
Why would that be an important factor?
Who knows whom to call in order to, make that go away.
Huh?
She knows now how to handle it.
So that must not be a problem. Yeah, if she already has previous experience with spiders, that could not have panicked her because she knows that they are harmless. Okay.
Yeah, but still she panics. So what could be the reason that she panics?
She's still not faced it head on, probably, she's seen the spider and she's got a fear. But her neighbor is not scared because he holds it in his hands. So probably, there is not a one-to-one face-off. It's only a looking and running away, but not an observation or something like that. Probably.
And why would she be afraid and her not?
Because he has the first-hand experience with it that it is harmless. So probably when he was cool enough, he has touched the insect and has experienced that it is harmless. Okay. But she has not experienced touching it that it is harmful. Okay. So that could be the difference between her neighbors. That's what we do right with our children. So they jump away seeing an insect, and we as elders have seen that particular insect many times in our life, and we have also known that it doesn't harm us. So until you learn that it is harmful or harmless, you are not able to judge why not to be panicked, something like that.
Yeah. So you can learn not to be scared when you handle spiders and you notice that they are not dangerous.
Yeah.
But Anita is scared, maybe because it's a sudden, unexpected, maybe because she's tired. What is happening in her body? It says her heart pounces and a cold sweat is coming over her. What could be happening there? Do you know anything about that already?
There could be a immediate rush into her nervous system, which is forcing her to react to the situation like that. So there are some physical changes which has been happening because of her mental observation. So there could be a connection between the sense organs as well as her physical behavior.
Yeah.
So this is a situation where we are trying to perceive from the environment and then react with an actuator. So we perceive the information of the spider. I mean, Anita perceives the information around her environment that it is a spider, and the actuators of her are her hands, her legs, and she bounces off and she goes cold and running, something like that. I can imagine.
Yeah.
Professor, we also have a very excited audience, very active audience. The audience says, Dr. P. Niranjan, he says, Anita may be having panic attacks.
Okay, yeah.
That's interesting.
Do you know about panic attacks?
So maybe he's typing, I'm just waiting. How do you know? So if you take India, spiders, more than spiders, we are scared of cockroaches. I'm not. Many of us are scared. So Professor Niranjan says, extrapolate other panic situations on the spider. That's one of the possibilities. Yeah.
And I saw in the chat also earlier that somebody was saying that maybe she had a previous bad experience with spiders, and that's why she's scared. Or maybe it's a panic attack, and because this is an adult woman, I presume she knows that spiders are harmless, but she's still panicking. So, like you see, and we already, when we start discussing this in a group, even though none of us are expert psychologists, we already know quite a lot. Between us, we can already brainstorm quite a bit about what we know. When we do this with other people, sometimes they come up with theories of why such a fear of spiders could come up. And they could come up with maybe she has seen somebody who's scared of spiders before, or maybe she had a bad experience with spiders, as you said before, or maybe she is tired, and that's why she has this reaction now. This is another good theory that could be in this list. Or There could be other factors. Maybe she's never seen spiders before. This is her first encounter. That was another theory that you proposed, no? That she had not had experience that spiders are harmless. So in a brainstorm like this, we gather what we as a group already know. And you as a group know a little bit different things than other groups. And that's okay, because we are just brainstorming here to get a sense of what we know and what we don't know. And there's a reason that we do this, and this is my second intermezzo. We ask you to brainstorm about what you already know, because this way you activate your prior knowledge. You activate what you already know about fears, about spiders, about how the nervous system works, about how you can make fears go away by experiencing that spiders are not harmless, are not harmful. So that you were explaining to us that if Anita would have good experiences with spiders, she could also learn not to be afraid of spiders. What we are doing here is that we are sort of making hooks. We are activating the knowledge that we already have, and then it will be easier for us to process new things we read about this problem and to remember that, because we can connect it to things that are already in our memory. And we know that that is the way that memory works, that you hook new knowledge onto things you already know, because when knowledge is related to each other, it's easier to learn and retrieve. Now, to activate prior knowledge, we need cues. And if we look back to the problem, you will see some of these cues. And you noticed some of those cues. She said she was tired. You noticed some of the symptoms that she had. You noticed that there's other people who are not afraid of spiders. So in this problem description, there are cues that help to activate the prior knowledge. And learners, students have different prior knowledge, but it's important that they activate their own prior knowledge, even if it's incorrect or incomplete. At this moment, that's okay, because the students are still going to study. They're still going to study their books. So let's go to the next step in our cycle. And that is that we want to structure what we've had during the brainstorm, and you can add the new things that are here in the brainstorm as well. And we're going to elaborate a bit further on this. So can you see some categories in this, in the list of ideas that you have brought up? How could we structure this brainstorm into categories?
Maybe I guess we can do in one is, which is directly affecting Anita, and another one is influence from and another one is the neighborhood. So three different categories in terms of understanding the problem.
Can I comment? Professor, I feel you can categorize this, as Abhishek told, into two main things. One is implicit and one is explicit. Or on the other way, one is internal as well as the other one is the external environment. I can read here runs in family, psychological disorders, behavior of parents, and then the external thing which could be disguised for other real problems, or probably classical conditions structuring can happen in two categories.
You were saying because sometimes the sound is not very good. You were saying in internal and external.
Right.
Yeah, Professor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably something which is implicit. Yeah, something which is implicit in their family on a hereditary basis. Most of them are frightened of insects. Okay, there's a phobia there, or it could be an external effect. She is frightened because she has seen some movies or some instances of the external world which has affected her thinking.
Well, I'd like to give my inputs here. So when we take very small children, like 2 years or 3 years, they do not fear snakes. They do not fear critical. They just hold it in their hands and then do it. So usually at that age, at the age of 3, they say the human brain is kind of totally developed. What happens later is conditioning. So maybe, as Professor UCN said, Anita here might have thought that it's a dangerous animal because others had told her. And then her neighbor, on the other hand, okay, maybe it's something that he has seen for himself that it is harmless. So there is, as Professor Annapurna also told just now, there is something that you have your innate, not your intuition, something that you know from prior experience, knowledge, and then there's the other things that have been told to you, and you have seen others doing that, and you see a logic in your actions, and probably that's why you have conditioned yourself that that is wrong or this is right, or some kind of a pattern there based on others' reactions to situations.
One of the participants is also saying this according to the time you can put in different.
Could you repeat that, please?
According to time frame, so you can differentiate it according to time frames. Is one of our participants also telling.
Okay.
Maybe I guess 1 month before the spider, during spider came in, and trauma after spider, things like that.
Yeah. So you're talking about different, maybe different reasons why this problem came into existence that are not related to specifically this moment, but the fact that she is afraid of spiders because she saw that other people were afraid, or she saw scary movies, or because of experiences that she had herself with spiders. And the timeline, that was not entirely clear to me what that meant. What did you mean with that?
So maybe I'm thinking that he is trying to say time frame. So one time frame before the incident happened, and during the incident, what has happened. So can differentiate based on that and try to solve the problem.
Yeah. That relates to what you were already saying, huh?
Yeah.
And would you also have ideas on how to solve Anita's problem?
Okay. One way is to make Anita put her in a situation where there are a lot of spiders and make sure that she doesn't, she get used to that, so that next time she sees, oh, it's also spider, I really don't care. That may be one of the solutions. But that's not, humane, I feel.
Give her some good experiences. Other ideas?
Yeah, just to how to help Anita now, that's one part of the thing, but probably if the child or the students had early learnings through touch or through visualization. Okay, there's one school where my child went in, they actually touched the grains, they actually touched the cotton balls. So if the learning was the feel, the touch of the real animals or real say insects which are harmless. That could have helped her in the earlier life. But right now, how to help her? Probably she could help herself by being in the situation more. Okay, as Abhishek told, that might not be a chance. She might not encounter the same spiders in the tub again and again. But once she faces this situation multiple times, she analyzes it that this is not something which I have to be frightened of.
Okay.
That's from my side. Yeah.
Right. Observation. The more the information that she can gather on spiders, have a close look at spiders, and also have a look at how the neighbor is actually dealing with the spiders, how he touches, how he handles, is he getting harmed? Probably, that's something that she can take on her own. So, other than what, Abhishek and Madam added. So, observation is sometimes, key to a lot of things becoming, much more manageable at times. Awareness. Right?
I see in the chat also that one of the other attendees is suggesting that the neighbors could explain to her how harmless spiders are, and maybe show it to her as well, and that the neighbor could help to hold the spider, and so that she doesn't immediately have to hold it herself, so that the neighbor can first show, and then maybe slowly can help her to look at the spider and later on to hold the spider. So to convince her that it's harmless. No? So we've been talking about, this is a way that we try to get students to discuss even more about what they already know, but also to make a little structure. We've talked about how different theories about how this problem came to existence. Immediate factors, she's tired, she's whatever at that moment, but also factors that were further away, implicit and external factors. And we have talked about maybe different ways to help Anita. And at this moment, it's clear that we know a lot about this, but not everything. But we're already starting to structure what we know. So these are some words that belong to this whole category of how did this problem exist. And you can see from the words that are on this slide that when we did this with the students before, they were students in psychology. So these are students who have a little bit more background, and they might know the names of theories already. And here we are in an audience that is more in the corner of computer science, so maybe these names are less prominent in your mind, and that's fine. We have talked about this context, and the way that we ask you to structure the knowledge is that if you have hooks and a structure in your mind, it is easier to learn. When the knowledge in your mind is structured, it's also easier to retrieve later on. And I think that when you are a computer scientist, you know that if you write computer code, you also structure, no? And our own mind works a lot like that. The more you talk about this with each other, with the other people that are listening, with your tutor, the more you already have this structure in your mind. So this elaboration, this talking with each other, it takes time, but it also has a function. So we go to step 5, which is the last step that we usually do in the first meeting with students. And we've talked a lot about what we already know about this problem. But there are also things that we don't know yet. So what do you think you still need to study to understand this problem fully? And you can look at the problem, or you can think of the categories that you've made before. What could be some of the questions that need further study if you were students?
Why does she get scared? What scares? Why does she get scared? Why is he not scared?
One of the questions is, yeah. Why are some people scared and other people not for the same thing? Yeah?
Yeah.
Other questions.
The psychology of psychology of an individual. Maybe we yeah.
Can you repeat that?
The psychology of an individual on his thoughts, why her thought is different versus his thoughts.
Yeah.
Probably the reaction of Anita could be studied when she is more calmer. What would her reaction be seeing this monster, little monster insect? So what we need to study to understand this fully, if we are focusing on Anita, probably we have to study her in different modes, when she is calmer, probably when she is stressed, or when she is on a holiday, how her reaction could be. And also to study these insects as such. There could be some spiders which could be harmful. So that would be one part of the study, and studying Anita's behavior could be the second category.
Yeah. So the psychology and why some people are afraid and others not, the influence of conditions of tiredness and stress, and would it be the same if she was not tired and on holiday? As I'm acting as your tutor now, I would tell you that actually studying spiders is maybe beyond the scope for now if you were my student, because that would be my role as a tutor, to tell you also when you go too far. Other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, probably the neighbors. So that is also a key term in this paragraph. So the role of the neighbor, probably if she never had a helping neighbor, probably she's in a farmhouse or a countryside where we don't have many neighbors, she would have calmed down by herself. Okay, so the situation where she knows that there's nobody to help her out, she has to help herself. That could also be one of the traits from the paragraph.
There's one more angle to it that I did not want to actually tell earlier. Why is it that usually, the men come out as, much more daring? So, so probably as Annapurna madam has told that, more exposure to the elements. Probably that's why he's not scared, and maybe, more sheltered life. Okay, came home from work, so not, this. So mind frame and a sheltered this, and her previous experience, or is she more prone to be scared all the time of creepy crawlies? So that's also there. So what can
sorry to interrupt, Ashwini, I don't think the gender is here. So neighbor, it doesn't tell whether it is he or she. Okay.
No, yeah, not the gender.
If I'm wrong.
Yeah, but the exposure to elements, as you said, somebody at place with more such probably she wouldn't have been so scared. Exposure to that in tiny bits or something, gently breaking down into that situation where you have more interactions with that. And then of course sometimes most of the people are scared of some situation but they don't know what actually happens. So probably facing things which makes you more scared need not be only spiders. It can gently ease your stress levels down. more, suddenly somebody pounces at you or something, you get scared all the time. It need not be only spiders. So the more exposure you have to such kind of situations, probably, like you'll be less scared. And again, when you rely on somebody else to save you, probably you're scared more times than most.
So
if you are
would it help if you were if somebody is exposed more to something that scared? Would it help if they were forced to solve the problem
I suppose
by themselves? And the gender question, we could rephrase it to something more general and say, are women more likely to be scared of insects than men? And if so, why would that be? I don't know, but it could be something that we might want to explore. When we are at the end of this discussion, the group of students ends up with a list of learning goals for themselves, like you have also formulated. We talked about why are some people scared for spiders and other people not. We talked about the influence of the situation, the stress levels, the tiredness. We talked about would it help to be exposed and having to face your fears. We talked about maybe gender as a factor in phobias like these. So we have formulated a set of learning objectives for ourselves, things we think we need to know more about. On the slide, you see a different set of learning objectives that another group of students could have come up with. And that's fine, because as a tutor in a session like this, I would help you to make sure that you address all the relevant issues in your questions. So if we had more time, I would ask you more questions to make sure that you have all the relevant issues in your learning objectives. There's a reason why we ask students to make their own learning objectives, because of course, as teachers, we could just simply make a list of learning objectives and send them home to study those. But when we ask students to make their own learning objectives, it means that they have ownership and that they are really curious about what they are going to study, because they have made these questions themselves. They have named the issues that they are interested in. They have also made their own structure, and they are not forced to use my structure. They have made their own structure that they can hook this new knowledge onto. And we know from experience and from research that this intrinsic motivation, as we call it with a more difficult word, it stimulates students to put in more time and effort into studying, and it also helps them to adapt the studying to their own needs. Because maybe you already know a lot about how some things work, but not about how other things work. So what you need to study is actually a little bit different from what other students need to study, because your background knowledge is different. So that's the important reason why we spend so much time to get students to formulate their own learning objectives. When we've had this discussion, the students go home and they study. This is where they take their books or the internet, or they go to the library and they study. And typically, they study about 8 to 10 hours in between the sessions. So it's quite a lot of studying they do here. They read about phobias, they read about different theories about how phobias come into existence, about why people are more some people are more susceptible to developing phobias than other people, what kind of experiences can lead to phobias. And we have used this fear of spiders as an example, but when they study here, they will learn about all kinds of fears and phobias. So this problem is kind of a starting point for quite a lot of studying. After that time, they come back. In the meantime, they might also have some, maybe a workshop or a training session. They might have some training on how to communicate with patients if they're psychology students, or they might have they might have a lecture about a related subject. They might see some videos of patients. There could be other activities too. After a few days, then they come back and they take their own set of learning goals and they spend about an hour to discuss what they have found and to try to answer their own learning objectives. And so they go back, they open up their computer, they read out the learning goals that if you would be doing this, you would be reading out the learning goals that you had formulated as a group, and you would be trying to answer your own questions. By now you have studied 8 to 10 hours, so you know a lot about why some people develop phobias and other people do not develop phobias. And you've also read about how stress and tiredness can influence that. You've also read about some therapies that will that explain how phobias maybe can be cured by exposing people to what they are afraid of step by step. So you will have a lot of knowledge and you can probably answer most of your own learning goals yourself. And there's a tutor then that can help you to make sure that you keep on the right track. Because in this session, as a tutor, I would tell you if you were not right in what you were saying. Another intermezzo. In this whole process, you would be learning in a group of students. And that's an important element of problem-based learning because you learn with each other and from each other. And there are mainly two big reasons that this is important. One is that by talking in the group, you elaborate, you ask each other questions, and you answer each other's questions. And as a group, you will know more than as a single student. The other reason that we think this collaborative learning is important is that you also learn how to collaborate in a group. And this is an important skill for any professional to have, because whatever job you will have in future, collaborating with your colleagues is going to be important in your work life. And that's also why we ask students to take active roles in these groups. So when we have these group discussions, this brainstorm session and this reporting session, it is actually one of the students who is the chairperson, who chairs the meeting. One by one, they take turns. One of the students is the chairperson. One of the students is the scribe taking notes. And the others are group members, and they rotate. The tutor, which is me in this case, usually just sits back and only intervenes when the process gets stuck. So this is where the students have a really active role. And this comes back to our idea that learning is stimulated when the students are really active, when they take the lead, when they are self-directing their learning process, they learn more. A few words more on the role of the tutor, the teacher who is present at this meeting. The tutor in our setting is a member of staff usually, or sometimes a more senior student who is specially educated to take this role. And the tutor is a facilitator. So the tutor is there to guide the group in this process, to monitor, to remind them of the different steps they should take, to also tell them when they are going out of scope, to ask extra questions if they miss important points. The tutor is also there to help students collaborate in the group. And so the tutor is also there to monitor if all the students are able to discuss, and the tutor might help some people that are quiet, or might help some people that are too dominant to also be quiet for a moment. And the tutor is there to support students in becoming more and more or less independent in this learning process. So for beginning students, the tutor will intervene more, but when the students get more experienced, the tutor goes to the background more and more, but still monitoring that they are on the right track. As you see, the tutor is not really a teacher here. The tutor is not the one who is going to explain, or to give all the answers. The tutor is going to ask questions or guide the process. This more or less gets us back, let me see, to the 4 principles that we talked about in the beginning. I hope that by now I have shown to you that in this problem-based learning format, the students are really active participants. They are not listening to a professor who is giving them knowledge. They are actually constructing knowledge in their own mind. It's more or less like they are writing their own algorithm here in their own mind, no? They start from a problem description that has context, that shows why it is important to learn about phobias and how to cure phobias. In the example that we saw, Anita is really scared, and it's hindering her to have a normal life if she would always be so scared of spiders. So it's clear why it's important for, at least for psychology students, to learn about phobias and to learn about how we can help people with phobias. We have studied this problem in a group, and this collaborative learning has helped us to explore, and we've directed our own learning process. So that's back to the 4 principles of problem-based learning. And I hope that by now I've also shown you why I thought it would not help for me to give you a lecture about problem-based learning, because it's kind of against the idea of problem-based learning that lectures are a good way to learn. And it doesn't mean that we never have lectures. There are also lectures, but the main part of learning for us happens in these small problem-based learning groups where students have a really active and self-directed role. I have here some links of places where you can, videos where you can see more about problem-based learning, and I will maybe paste these links in the chat for you. I think that might help. And then I'll be available for questioning. So maybe you can already think about questions, and I'll work on pasting the links in the chat. I think I have to sort of go out of the presentation mode for a while and copy these links in the chat. Oh, that doesn't really work, I think. Does it?
It should.
It should, yeah. Maybe I'm just copy. Maybe I should do it like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll try to do it. I'll check it.
Yeah, maybe you try to do it, and I'll take questions in the meantime.
Yeah. One question I have in particular is, whenever we have a student who is a larger group of students, for example, I have a class of 60, which is typical class size here, or maybe 30. So how will we handle this problem-based learning? Because I'm the only one tutor who will be there. Maybe I don't have help of senior students. So how can we handle this kind of situation?
Yeah, there are several ways to handle that situation, and one of the ways is something that you already hinted to. If you have the time, you could train some of the senior students to help you and to take the role of tutor. This is also something that we do because we also don't have enough staff members always available for all the groups of students. And we have seen that master students, for example, with a little bit of training can be good tutors for junior students. There usually is a tutor guide for the tutors, which gives them a summary of what the students should cover. So the tutor doesn't have to be an expert on every terrain. It's nice if a tutor knows a little bit about the content domain, but you don't need experts. You can use senior students, you can use teaching staff that is more or less a bit in the same terrain. Another solution is to use related formats to problem-based learning. There is, for example, a learning format called team-based learning, which is a little variation. It's a bit like that, like this, where students are asked to read beforehand, then they come to the class, they take some test questions to test how far they are in their knowledge, and then they do a group discussion in the large lecture hall. So you could divide your 60 students there and then in 5 groups of 12, give them an hour to discuss, and then take some time to summarize the main discussion points in the large group. And then you could do, I think that is quite similar to this, but in a large group setting. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. So I'll leave to the audience now. Maybe I'll just check if we have. So, Professor, there is also Q&A session, if you have seen that. I'm in a box.
Yeah, I saw it before. So, oh yeah. Yeah.
There are some questions. One of Dr. Udupi Niranjan is asking, what is the maximum and minimum number of students required to participate in problem-based learning?
We've done quite a lot of research on this, and it seems that the ideal group size is around 6 to 8. Because if you have less than 6 students, there's not enough in the group to discuss. In practice, I will tell you that also in Maastricht, our groups are usually 12 to 14, because otherwise it becomes very complex to organize. And it can also work with groups that are a little bit larger. The possible negative effect of a larger group is that it's easier for some students to sit back and do nothing. And that is a pity, because then they don't really benefit from the format. If they just sit back and are quiet and don't really prepare and don't study between the sessions, then they get lost. And so the larger the group, the more difficult it is to involve everyone in the discussion, but it's not impossible.
Okay, so participants, I request if you have any questions, please post on Q&A or chat window. We'll be happy to ask Professor Daniëlle to answer. So we have one more question: how to sustain the passion of learning among students and maybe ourselves as students?
That's a very good question, there is not one easy answer. One part of how to keep our passion is to make sure that what we learn is that we see why it is relevant, why it is interesting, and it's easier to see that if we see the context where we will apply this. If you work in a project, or you gave the examples yourself this morning, no? When you are forced to go to online teaching, it's clear that you have to learn about online teaching, and you will learn about online teaching because that's what you really need. So when we feel the need to learn something, it's easy to keep the passion. For problem-based learning, one of the things that we have seen is that if we use the same format, this format of 7 steps that we have done today, this is something that we do mostly with the junior students who just start in university in their first year, their second year. If we keep the same format for all the years, then it will become kind of a ritual and people will get bored. So some level of variation is important, using different formats, and also making sure that students keep on being challenged. Challenged because the problems themselves become more difficult, but also challenged because we give them more responsibility. Because we stop telling them exactly what to do and how to do it, and gradually give them more responsibility in directing their own learning process. Maybe even giving them choice in what they find interesting to study. Giving them choice to formulate the topic of their own project to work on. Because then it will be relevant and they will be interested.
Yeah, one of the participants also mentioned that putting their own learning objective is really innovative and makes them more curious, challenging themselves. Usually, as a university, as a school, we put the learning objective. This is what you should learn. If they come up, that's really amazing. Even I personally like that idea. So, any other participants, you have any question? Annapurna ma'am, you have any questions to Professor?
Not really, Abhishek. It was amazing hearing Professor. I suppose having put 2 decades in teaching, I learned a lot today. That's amazing. Coming to the Indian scenario, Professor, we usually have a challenge covering up the content. But my experience tells that the different teaching methodologies what we have adapted, whether it's flipped classes, so that could help us focus more on problem-based learning. So usually what happens in subjects of computer science when we teach the compiler design or the data structures or algorithms and so on, if we spend more time in problem-based solving, probably we will not be able to cover up the syllabus which is actually ruled by our academic norms and so on. But listening to you today, I felt we can streamline our delivery into 2 modes. One is with the flipped classes, we can go ahead and give them what what would be the discussions to the coming classes, and then engage them more. So this engagement, that's the takeaway for me today. It was amazing. So we have to keep them engaged by making them do and bringing the sense of belongingness among the students, that they own it, that learning objectives, they own it. That's nice.
If we can make that work, if we can make it work so that they are interested and engaged, then we can convince them to cover the syllabus in their self-study time.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. If that works, they will learn it more easily and they will remember it better. I'm not saying that problem-based learning is a miracle solution to make this happen suddenly. We also know and have researched that it doesn't always work perfectly, and that it doesn't work for every student. But if it works, it can be really good. Yeah, and it can help students.
So, Ashwini, you have any questions or any final notes?
Well, it was a great session. There was more learning today than for people who teach especially. So I'd been of the thought that to teach is a challenge because you need to make a person think. The challenge, am I audible? I'm sorry. Yeah. So, yeah. So the thing is that my takeaway today was that when people are given ownership, they do things much better. So, yeah, thanks for that. I'd also like to know, we have most of our lab courses where you have to think, do it. But when you actually do it, you need to understand things better and then go ahead. So there are things that, each one has their own pace. So when you have a team or when you have, even then, there are people who are not in sync. So probably, we need to get the pace of the people who are working at the same frequency. So that's a challenge, but nonetheless, that was a good thing that that I got to know today. It was like, giving ownership to the people as to, these are the things that need to be learned and based on, like a self-initiation. That was great. Thank you.
Yeah, what you say is interesting, because it's true that people don't have the same pace of learning, and sometimes some students have more background than others, or they learn faster than others. And when you do problem-based learning, to an extent, the group can buffer this, because students in the group, they support each other, and often in the group, there are students who know a little bit more and students who understand a little bit less. And if that is within boundaries, that is also okay. They can lift each other. If some people really stay behind and cannot keep up at all, it does become a problem. So if the differences become too big, it might get difficult.
I mean, I've seen that usually in a class with a lot of heterogeneity. I'm sorry, Abhishek, just a minute. Yeah, so usually the learning's much more interesting and there's a lot more interaction. So that's right.
Yeah.
So we have questions from a couple of participants. First question is, how to motivate instructor, as we need more instructors in a class strength of 60. So maybe 4 different instructors or tutors. So how can you motivate them is the question.
That's a good question. I can. What we do when we have new teaching staff, we introduce them to the background of problem-based learning. We put them through a session like this to experience also how it works. When they are tutored for the first time, we guide them. And we also, what can I say? I try to sometimes tell my own story. When I teach as a tutor, I actually learn myself every time, because when the students ask questions, when the students discuss, as a tutor, I also learn. This role of tutoring is more rewarding, I think, than standing in front of a lecture hall and telling the same story over and over again. When I have to tell the same story, the first time I give a lecture, it's interesting. The 10th time I have to tell that same story, I'm bored. The 10th time I have a tutor group with the same PBL problems, I'm not bored, because it's a different group that has different discussions. It really motivates me as a teacher. Plus, I think when you are teaching like this, you see the effect on your students. You get to know them. You are there with them in the discussion. So I think this is a more rewarding way of teaching and a less boring way of teaching.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. We have 5 more minutes. Questions are pouring in. The next question is, can PBL be done in field than the classroom for better reflection of real world problems? Field in the sense outside place or
outside, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so, yes. The whole idea of problem-based learning is that we take real or realistic problems as the start of learning. We start with paper cases sometimes because it's easier. But for example, our medicine students, when they get to the 3rd year, instead of reading a paper problem, they actually go and interview patients in groups of 2 or 3, and that interview becomes the start of problem-based learning. And that is even more realistic. I think that you could take it out to the field as well. Even better, I would say.
Yeah, true. So the next question is, next one is just a comment that I like the fact that a real life problem of the spider in the bathtub was taken, which shows the problem-based learning can be applied to all problems in life by anybody and everybody. So that's a compliment. Thank you for that. And
thank you.
Next question is, for a tutor, what should be the ratio of empathy and discipline in versus strictness with the student? How should be empathized, and what is the discipline you should follow with the students?
That's a really interesting question, and there are different ways of dealing with that in the world. So when I'm a tutor in Maastricht, I have to tell students that they need to actively participate in these group sessions. And as a tutor, if I think that a student is not participating, I have to mark that student as absent. And when they are absent, they have to do an additional assignment. So that's one way. There are also, I know, places where the tutor has to give a mark to students for participation, and this mark is actually 5 or 10% of their exam mark. So there are more or less strict ways to force students to be active. What is important in this is that we do not punish people for saying something that is wrong. And the whole point of these discussions is that we talk. When something is wrong, either the other students or the tutor will correct that. But the talking is important, and it's even, we learn more from having a wrong idea and then discovering that it's wrong. So I think that is an important factor, that we are strict in the sense of they have to participate. But that's the thing, whether they're right or wrong and what they say is not something to be strict on.
Okay, so the last question for our session is, what is the role of giving analogies and storytelling in PBL?
Well, in a way, the problem is storytelling. We take this problem case, and that's storytelling. Personally, I use analogies and other stories a lot when I'm a tutor. When I try to stimulate the discussion, I often use analogies or other related stories. If we had more time, I might have asked maybe we would have explored fear of cockroaches, or we would have explored other types of fears. I would have maybe I would have asked students to tell stories about what they are afraid of and why they think they are afraid of this. So all these stories and analogies help us to make it contextual, to see the relation with our world.
Yeah. So I guess we are done with questions as well as the time. We started on time and we are about to complete on time. So thanks a lot, Professor. It was really amazing questions. I can see a lot of compliments flowing in on the chat window. So they've also privately written to me saying it was amazing session. Thanks for such a good session. And I'm sure the links which we have posted on chat window will further open doors for them to explore problem-based learning. And having said this, thanks a lot for your time. And I'm really sorry for extending your day, making your day longer, starting very early, and maybe if you have your office work starting after this session. Thank you for being generous and helping us out with this session. And I would also like to thank Dr. Annapurna Patil, who was with us and who made this workshop interactive, along with Professor Ashwini Holla, who was also with us. And nevertheless, the audience was so amazing. They were giving answers right there when we were trying to interact. Maybe we can, maybe sometime we can fly you down to India when things settle down, and you can do this workshop, which will be even more interesting. So, with,
a closing note, I think Abhishek, we also, Professor Daniel will agree with me. Abhishek has been a very dynamic IEEE volunteer with all his other credits to his bucket of whatever he has achieved. He has been amazing, and he is known to do things differently. And I think Professor Daniel has helped him nurture this quality in some time of his life. Thank you. It's amazing. This exposure, I think many of the attendees will also remember for a long time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's amazing for me too to do this at distance. I've done this a lot face to face, and it's amazing to do this at distance. And I feel that I'm with you even though I cannot be at this moment in time.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.